Welcome everyone to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We're here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good or be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. You deserve to feel good. We all deserve to feel good. We have a very, very exciting special show for you here today. And before we get started, I have a quick little video I like to share with you all and what we do in the cannabis space as nurses, and then we'll get right into it.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship, and what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
I love that little video, growing in health, growing in cannabis. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sherry Mack, and I'm the Chief Nursing Officer and co-founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse and Vice President of Nursing at Bloom Hemp CBD. I'm a cannabis nurse, patient, advocate, activist, and a very passionate podcaster here to change the paradigm of healthcare. I'm so grateful for having this podcast, and I'm so excited to announce that this has been my 8th year podcasting The Green Nurse, Living Your Best Life. I started podcasting in 2018 when the National Council State Boards of Nursing came out with their guidelines that all nurses must have 6 essential areas of knowledge when it comes to cannabis as medicine. I started podcasting to share compelling stories of healing and to decrease stigma, since I too use cannabis as medicine. But before we get started on our very exciting show, we do have a message from our very special sponsors at Bloom Hemp. And I'm going to pull up a handy dandy little slide. And Bloom Hemp CBD is a woman and nurse owned national hemp CBD supplier, leading with quality, safety, value, and patient-centered care. Bloom Hemp products are USDA organic CBD grown in the mountains of Colorado and tested for purity, potency, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles. Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line and free care plans. So call and ask 970-404-HOPE if you have any questions, and Green Nurse for 10% off and free shipping. Thank you so much, Bloom Hemp, for sponsoring the show today. All right, we are going to get right into it. So as you all know, cannabis nursing has been recognized as a specialty, and nurses are truly making an impact on advocating for the safe therapeutic use of cannabis by teaching on the endocannabinoid system and how to optimize cannabis as medicine for health, healing, and wellness purposes. And as plant medicine nurses, role extends beyond recommending cannabis and hemp products. We strive to provide alternative solutions from multiple modalities that support the most important system, the endocannabinoid system, promoting that overall health, wellness, and healing. And so today I'm really honored to welcome Dr. Janice Putnam. She is a distinguished nurse leader and the newest secretary of the American Cannabis Nurses Association. Dr. Putnam holds a doctorate from the University of Central Missouri, where she is recognized as nursing faculty emeritus. I just said it wrong, sorry. Emeritus. Yes. Her expertise lies in teaching and researching policy and addiction issues related to combustible, tobacco, and cannabis. We're going to talk about that. Beyond her academic contributions, Dr. Putnam remains deeply engaged in multiple roles. She continues to teach part-time, cares for her aging family members, and manages the Odessa Country Winery near Kansas City, Missouri. She also holds a medical cannabis certificate from the Pacific College of Health and Science, underscoring her commitment to advancing knowledge in this vital area of cannabis nursing. And as a leader within the American Cannabis Nurses Association, Dr. Putnam serves as both board member and co-chair of the Policy and Government Affairs. And again, like I'd said earlier, she is the newest secretary for the organization. Additionally, she is an engaged member in the American Nurses Association, called the ANA, and Nurse Advocacy Fellow for Missouri Nurses Association, showcasing her dedication to shaping policy and advocating for the nursing profession. Welcome, Janice.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
That was a really long intro to get you here, but we got you here. And
I've been around for a while.
Yeah, and I did have the honor of presenting with you. We did poster presentations at one of the American Cannabis Nurses Association conferences and really enjoyed that opportunity, But, we all don't wake up one day. And I know I didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be a cannabis nurse, or, hey, this is, what I'm going to do now. There's usually a compelling story which brought you to cannabis nursing, and we want to hear that story. But first, let's talk about what brought you to nursing first. We have Nurses Week coming up. And I'm actually writing a blog on what actually inspired me to become a nurse, not even just a cannabis nurse, but just a nursing nurse. I've loved nursing my whole life. And so, and it's generally a calling. So why did you become a nurse to begin with?
Okay, well, it was a combination of just being practical. I'm very pragmatic, and also a calling. So originally, as a little girl, I just didn't understand why science couldn't cure the common cold. We could cure so many things, and every winter I'd get a cold, I'd get another cold, and you had to tough it out, and your head would be congested, and you'd have the cough. I usually get bronchitis. It was just one of those things that I said, someday I'm going to grow up, and I'm going to fix this, the pragmatic piece. So in high school, I had an opportunity. I became a phlebotomist. And I also went to college, and I started as a lab tech. It was that bench science thing. I still had my purpose in mind. So I had a chance to do some lab work. I worked in the microbiology lab. I worked in the hematology lab. I did a lot of urinalysis and coagulation studies. But then I had an opportunity to start a biochemistry degree. And I was super excited about that. And but I also was pregnant with my first child. One of the fun stories in my life is that while I was going to college for biochemistry, my parents were also attending the same college with me. Oh. So my dad was studying history, and my mother, she was studying nutrition. And all of the bench science textbooks are about that thick, and I was taking 5 classes. And my father would run from his class to my class to pick up my books when I was 9 months pregnant and take me to my next class. Oh, well, that was lovely. I mean, that just makes my heart so happy. It's a great story. So anyway, she was due on Labor Day. I had a beautiful baby girl, and I decided to take a break from school for a little bit. So I took a break, and when she was ready to go to preschool, I decided to go back to school. And I had to decide, was I still going to be a lab tech, or I really love phlebotomy. I was in the hospital. I could go to all the floors, the emergency room. I like people. I thought maybe I could be an IV nurse. And so that was my goal. And I went to local community college with the intention of being an IV nurse. So while I was in school, I was in my cardiology unit, and my grandfather loved to play golf, and he had a fatal heart attack on the golf course.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that something? He died doing what he loved, and I've never regretted that. But he died of the heart attack. At the same time, I had a nursing faculty member that made such a big impression on me. She explained the heart, and I understood it, and I was called to be there. There I was. I became a cardiac nurse. Graduated from school, took a job at Thomas Jefferson University in Center City, Philadelphia, worked on the 5th floor of 22 floors, and I had my experience in telemetry. I did some stress testing, did the cath lab, and finally ended up with cardiac rehab, which is health promotion, and that's what I truly love.
Wow. That's phenomenal. It's interesting because at one point in time in my nursing career, when I went to college to become a nurse, I was afraid of needles. It's like, how am I going to do this? So I became a phlebotomist too. I was a phlebotomist all through college, which is really fascinating. And then eventually down the road, years in, after being a nurse for, I don't think it was like 15 years, it was after my child was born. Yeah, no, it was like 25 years in, literally, before I became an IV nurse, and I became a home infusion IV nurse. So PICC lines, midlines, portacasts, Hickmans, accessing, drawing bloods, and giving IV. And it was really interesting. I never in a million years thought that I would ever do that. And looking back on my nursing history too, my nursing career, it's as you had, the reason why you became a phlebotomist, I don't know, but mine was fear-based to kind of walk through that fear. But it was always also a compassion or a need to serve or a way to learn something new to advance the needle, not only personally and professionally, but even on a soul level, right? Like I became a pediatric nurse after taking care of my son, who was born with a rare genetic disorder. He was born, only 50 cases in the world. And so my whole branchio-oculofacial syndrome he was born with, rare genetic disorder. He was on tubes and feedings and oxygen and I had a crash course on pediatric nursing. And pediatrics, it's interesting, when I was in nursing school, almost failed pediatrics because I was so afraid I was going to hurt the kids.
Yes, I understand that. The needle, the in and out, and in and out, and in and out. That.
So pediatric nursing, came on my radar as a direct result of having a child with a rare genetic disorder, because I found that there was things that were missing in how that they discharge patients from home and the education. And it was the kids are fine. It's the parents.
Yeah.
Literally, the kids are fine if you're not doing anything to them. It's when you actually, and then the actuality of preparing if you did have to access a line or do something with them, how you do that, developmentally. But it was very interesting just to hear, and just taking a walk down memory lane as to all the different roles that we've played as nurses. Yeah. So continue on. So tell us more, because now you're in a teaching role. You're doing something completely different.
Completely different. Well, I finally settled in. I had finished my bachelor's degree, and I was working as a cardiac rehab nurse. And my boss told me that he thought it would be good for me to go back and get my master's degree with some financial background, because it's good for a nurse to have some financial background when you're moving into a more administrative role. So that's what I did. And I went to Thomas Jefferson. I thought that was a magnificent school. I had a great opportunity to go right into the heart of a great big city and all the culture and all the excitement of doing that, and some of the leading research going on in the whole world. And then one day my husband came home and he says, I have accepted a job in a place called Grain Valley, Missouri. One, I didn't know where Grain Valley was, but it sounded beautiful. And two, I wasn't exactly sure where Missouri was. I know it was in the center of the United States somewhere. So I pulled out the map, took a look at that, and we came out to Missouri, and we found a nice little farm, and we moved out here. And that was a huge shift to go from Center City to the rural areas. And I did try to work in Kansas City Central, but my daughter was little, my husband was traveling, so I decided to stay closer to the farm, and that's how I got into education. It worked out very well for me, for my family situation, but it was also challenging, and it was something I loved as a cardiac rehab nurse to teach. I taught so much about lifestyle modification and how you can make small changes and they make big impacts. So I felt like this was the right place for me to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's just what is your, so right now in your, what do you do currently as your role as a nurse? Like, what is your current role?
Well, I loved teaching as a nurse educator so much that for over 25 years I've been teaching at the same university. And right now I'm teaching part-time because I have several older adults that I'm taking care of at home. I teach health policy for nurse practitioners and nurse educators in the master's program. And I also teach drug addiction for our health studies program at the undergraduate level. What I did find out through the work that I'm doing is that women are the primary caregivers of older adults, and that 1 in 4 women over 55 years old is taking care, unpaid caregiving, to someone usually in their family. And that women over 55 are 5 times more likely to work part-time because of this caregiving. And I had no doubt that because I could, this is what I needed to do. And I'm able to find that balance. And I think that's so important, especially when we get into cannabis eventually, the balance. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I do believe in service, just like you started. Nursing, where we believe it. We believe in service, period. But as an educator, there's 3 areas that we believe in, and that's excellence in teaching, excellence in service, and scholarship, and so research. So I have been serving on 2 boards. I serve on the ACNA board, and I'm a new member. I just started in January, but I'm learning so much about the board work. But I also belong to a local community health center network. And this brings my ability as a nurse to impact boards at the local level. And so this little network has 6 different clinics, and they provide services including not only the clinical services, but they do mental health services and they do dental services. And they're a federally qualified health center. So that in our area, if people are not able to pay for their healthcare needs, there's a sliding scale that the government helps to support. So Medicaid is very, very important in this work, and this is really something that I've been on their board, and I associated with them since 2008. So it's been quite a while, and it's been a super experience.
Nice. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So fast forward, what brought you to cannabis? Like, you know, I mean, we know if this is the most misunderstood plant in the world. And, you know, and it takes a lot of bravery to step out and say, hey, I'm a cannabis nurse, right? It takes a lot of bravery and courage and grit and resilience. And there's usually something in your heart, you know, that really speaks to the nurse that takes the plant medicine route and really decides to share on it and become involved. And so we're so happy that you have. But tell me why, what brought you to cannabis nursing?
Okay, this is not going to be a fast forward too fast. It'll take about 5 minutes, so bear with me.
That's okay, it's all good.
Okay, I had my master's degree and I was teaching. And when I started teaching in 1998, they told me that they would consider the master's degree the terminal degree of nursing. And 2 years later, they decided, no, it needed to be the doctorate degree. So in order for me to keep my job as a tenured track nurse educator, I had to go back and get a doctorate degree. So I promptly went up to the school, and one of the questions on my interview was, what do you think you'd like to do for your dissertation? Well, I had just bought a farm, and on the farm, we decided to plant grapes. And so my very first article I ever wrote had to do with nursing care plans and agricultural injuries in vineyard workers. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And
Wow.
I got a very cold response from the interview team. And I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? Well, they explained to me they didn't have the resources. I was just in the wrong state to have that kind of desire and drive. So I had to think about it. They recommended I think about it, and I did. And I was very fortunate to run into some R1 funded research teams. They were a whole team that was a health psychology team, and they were looking at tobacco culture and cessation in the Department of Defense. We have an Air Force base out here, and we were working there, and it's right next to where I teach at. And so I decided it was a good fit with my cardiac background. This is lifestyle modification, and I became involved in smoking cessation.
Ah,
For my dissertation, this was in about 2000. I was a certified freedom from smoking, American Lung Association cessation instructor. I took this program and put it online. This was the same time that the American Lung Association was putting it online. But what I did is we had started using the learning platform called Blackboard. And I took the course that I was teaching, Freedom from Smoking, and put it inside Blackboard and offered it as a course to the students on campus.
nice.
And as they went through this course, I was able to then interview them and get an exploratory study done of what their experience was online. So what we found out was that the cessation rate was pretty close to the same cessation rate. The students said that it was the educational material was good, that they felt comfortable in the environment, they felt competent with the skills to access everything. But they told me that it doesn't matter whether it's face-to-face or telehealth, quitting smoking is hard to do.
Yeah.
And we have, it is. And so it
Well,
didn't make a difference. But
I
yeah.
could tell you, I'll tell you my story. So, smoked from college, probably it was until the time I wanted to start having babies. And so, yeah, and being a nurse. And I remember it was crazy. In the first hospital that I worked at, they had a smoking room. Like, I was like, this is insane. And so it was really interesting. I mean, this was back in 1988, so 89, 90. And so I remember when I wanted to quit smoking, I started my own smoking cessation program, and it was literally weaning myself from amount of cigarettes a day. And the last cigarette was the hardest one to quit because I would do a half of a cigarette on the way to work and a half of a cigarette on the way home, and I was good. But it was that last one that was the hardest to do. But how I did it was I bought a new car, and that was it. I'm not smoking in my new car.
Good for you.
And I got it.
That's right. And sometimes rewards like that work. And that's the nice thing. I was able to take some of that, and most nurses can take that kind of coaching. It doesn't matter really what you're coaching about, but being able to apply those life skills to be able to get you to a point where you're successful in changing your behaviors. And that's really, really important.
Behavioral modification.
So what happened after
behavioral modification,
exactly.
And then what happens when you're triggered, right? You think about cigarettes are just something that people, it's like the vape pen nowadays. We see people are grabbing for that vape pen. And how do you manage anxiety? How do you manage conflict? How do you sit with discomfort and move through it without having to soothe with something that is unhealthy, right? Because we all know, I'm sorry,
Right.
Cigarette smoking is very unhealthy. It is not good for you, period, end of story. There is no research that supports any health benefits to cigarettes, ever.
Correct. Correct.
So it's
Correct.
It's very, yeah.
Right. So I graduated from school, super excited, and I go back to the college. And as a faculty member from the academic end, I was able to collaborate with the University Health Center, who had a health promotion office that they called the Violence and Substance Abuse Prevention Office, or the VSAP office. And so I was able to provide smoking cessation for college students. And honestly, I wasn't very busy except for usually the couple weeks before a big break, because the students would come to college and they would experiment with cigarettes, become addicted, and then it was time to go home to the family, and they were mortified that they couldn't quit and go home. So I would help them quite a bit. So this happened for a few years, and then what we started noticing was this is the time of the e-cigarette and vaping. And not only was it e-cigarettes amazing and big numbers in the high schools, like upwards of 40% in our state. But that they were adding cannabis to this, and we started seeing derivatives on campus, such as butters and dabs and waxes, that most of us had never even heard of before. So we have this whole team of campus safety professionals trying to understand what was going on in the field because we weren't prepared for it. And this has included people that was not only the health center, but the public safety offices, the housing offices. There was a lot of people involved and very concerned because we were worried about student success. And we were worried about the impact that cannabis could have on performance, on memory, about just being successful as a student. So that is really how I became involved in cannabis, from the misuse and really trying to promote student success.
So initially coming in through your work at the college, so seeing students showing up with these vapes and these dabs and how can we do a harm reduction approach and getting them to stop. And then you subsequently learned about the benefits of cannabis.
Okay, we're all the way up to 2018. I'm so excited. We're up to 2018. We're getting closer. So 2018 happened to be the year of the perfect storm for cannabis in my life. We knew we were having challenges with cannabis on campus. So we had a coalition in the state, what was called Partners in Prevention, which had 22 colleges as part of this coalition, and we meet monthly. So we went in with a study that was designed for focus groups to explore what was the current perceptions of cannabis on campus. We had 42 people there from 15 different colleges, and what we found out through our discussions were that the perceptions on college in 2018 were already strong, and the tone was punitive. It was very disciplinary. That the people that were wanting these healthcare teams, the student healthcare team, the campus safety teams, were needing more information about the different formats. They were looking for information on what were safe dosages for cannabis at this point. And they were really looking for some education on how to have just a conversation with the students about cannabis use with some kind of a hook for this harm reduction piece. Yeah. So I did this study and I was really pleased with the study, but in 2018, we had two other things happen. One, the voters in the state of Missouri approved medical marijuana. And two, the NCSB guidelines, which the Nursing State Board guidelines came out, sharing that nurses had a responsibility to know. You alluded to, oh yes, I have it too. You're putting your mind's black and white because I printed it, but
yeah, NCSB guidelines.
Right. They want nurses to know what were the state laws, what were the MMP, the medical marijuana program laws, what were the policies of the institution you were working for. This is a lot of layers of knowledge of what's going on out there. Then nurses also needed to be knowledgeable about the endocannabinoid system, as well as the pharmacology of cannabinoids. And then lastly, and this is extremely important, the nurses need to be non-judgmental when they're taking care of their patients so that the patients can share what their concerns are and what their benefits are when they're using something that has a strong stigma.
Yes.
So this was the perfect storm. And I had decided it was not all about abuse, but now we had a medicine, and that was fit with my nursing mentality. So this is how I got into cannabis nursing.
That's awesome. And the therapeutic use of cannabis defined is the use of cannabis products for medicinal, wellness, and healing purposes. It's personal and subjective to each consumer, with objective criteria being improvement in one of the 5 health domains: biological, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social, without negatively impacting any of the others. So in other words, if you're feeling good mentally and emotionally, but your physical health and spiritual health and social health is declining, then you're probably not using it therapeutically, right? So it's always, it needs to be improvement in a health domain without negatively impacting any of the others. And so that's where teaching on the endocannabinoid system becomes so important, right? Because you can overdo it, you can take too much. And the more you learn about this magnificent plant and the system that we all have in our bodies, the more you can truly understand that you don't need a lot of THC to influence the system, right? So when you learn about the anandamide molecule that mimics the THC molecule in the plant, the anandamide molecule is 1/10 the strength of the THC molecule. So people taking large amounts of THC over time is going to cause a downregulation in cannabinoid receptors. Anandamide production is going to slow down. You're going to see hormonal signaling changes, dopamine signaling changes, and then it sets people up for trouble in the long run. Rare but happens cannabis use disorder, as well as cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which people didn't think was real, but it is real. I've taken care of a couple of patients that have it. So, and it's with all of this too much high THC. We really need to be educating consumers that you don't need a lot, because when we produce our own anandamide molecule, we're not producing 10 milligrams of THC. We're producing this molecule upon demand to nudge a receptor to initiate a cellular response for the body to either do something or not do something, right? It's either an agonist or an antagonist. So it's very, very interesting. And so it's very important. So I think that this work that we're doing as nurses is going to be so pivotal and critical to how cannabis evolves, even in healthcare in the future, if we ever see that. It's been taking some time. I say take your time, but hurry up, right?
Well, and when it comes to policy, I think it's really important for us to be patient. Yeah. Because I've lived in academia for a long time, and things do not happen quickly in academia. They don't happen quickly in policy for the most part either. There's always exceptions. But for the most part, for instance, when I was working with the VSAP department at our university, it took 10 years to get a smoke-free tobacco policy on campus. Yeah. 10 years. And that's called tenacity. You got to believe in what you believe in and stick it out as long as it takes to make it happen.
Yep, totally agree. Totally agree. So how do you now currently share your knowledge of cannabis with others, and how do you integrate it into your current educational role?
I started after 2018, I'm teaching this drug addiction class. And what I started noticing about the students were, they were coming in overly confident with their knowledge of cannabis. If our students were recruited from a state where cannabis was legal, they had either told me, yes, I've watched my parents use it for years, or I've been to a dispensary, I know. And one, I have to say, you do know that it's not, it's against policy on our campus. That was number one. But number two, I became really concerned about this overconfidence. And I had a colleague that was looking at this concept called intellectual humility. Fascinating. The idea, it's like the opposite of fake it till you make it. It's the idea of it's okay not to know everything. Yeah. And if you learn new information, you should be able to change your mind about some of your beliefs that you've had if there's new information. And the idea that curiosity is a good thing. You should be able to ask questions if you don't know. And so I teach about cannabis using intellectual humility. And I do a couple of activities. The first activity I do is a little quiz. I ask the students, do you know what the endocannabinoid system is? And have you had it in a previous class? And when I first started teaching, 80% of our students said that they were not getting that in their anatomy and physiology courses. So I went to the anatomy and physiology instructor, and we had a discussion, a nice lunch, and it's now part of that curriculum, which is good from my perspective. The second thing in the class I do is I offer them a job, and I have them analyze the job as a cannabis health educator as to whether they think it's a good job or not, and why. So the job that they're being offered, they get a choice to go to one of 4 different states that have different cannabis laws. So wherever they go, they have to find out, 1, what is the cannabis laws in that state? 2, what is the culture in that state about cannabis? 3, do the people that want cannabis have access to it? And the 4th one is, is there assistance for those people that have some misuse issues? So one of the feedbacks I get on this is that a lot of students never even knew there was a job such as that. So this is really a nice way to introduce them not only to cannabis, there's a lot of things to consider, but also it could be a job that they could think about for the future.
Yeah.
Then our next activity we do a role play where the students are going to go in and do an in-service for an emergency room, because the emergency room has recently had some adolescents coming in that have been using cannabis, and they are to present the CUDIT-R, which is a screening tool that helps us to know whether or not there's some cannabis misuse going on. And it also shows the role that, as being in the health field, there are a lot of people that need education as providers, not just the patients. So this is a great way to increase confidence that these students know about cannabis and that they can go out and share this. And then the last one is, bear with me for a minute, what is my last one I teach? I don't know. I forgot the last one, but we've been doing a lot of, I know what it is. Here it is. It is our virtual field trips.
There you go. I remember that.
Yes, my virtual field trip. One of the first field trips I ever took with the American Cannabis Nurses Association was to a medical marijuana grow site, a cultivation site in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we spent the day there with a gentleman that was so super competent in his field and so willing to share. And we were able to walk through the greenhouses and look at the security and see how they dried the cannabis. And it gave me such a different perspective about the quality of the product that you can obtain for medicine. And so I made this into a virtual field trip, and the students absolutely love being able to see that side of cannabis. So that's how I help to share with students.
That's awesome. Cannabis. Yeah, it is amazing to see a cultivation facility. We had the opportunity, Elizabeth and I, to see probably one of the largest. It was 13 acres of grow. 13. They were actually harvesting 1,000 pounds a week in Canada. It was like nothing I had ever seen in my entire life. I was like, whoa. Yeah, it's very fascinating. And then to even see, the different grow rooms of the plants, from when they're starting off in vegetative state and to when they're in their growing phase and when they're in their flowering phase, and how they treated them. I remember when we were filming for High Science, we never made the cut, but we were filming for High Science, a documentary, and we had the opportunity of letting ladybugs out, like ladybugs, and there were some other kind of bugs that they were letting out in the facility to what was it? What was they I can't think of the name of the bugs. Ladybugs was one, and there was another bug that they put out to help control pests, right? And funguses and other pests that were getting in there. It was really fascinating. And then to even take it from there, once that they cultivated it, and then the drying room and what that looked like, rows and rows and rows of cannabis hanging. And then from there, the extraction and how you extract. I mean, it is very educational. And for anyone, that is new to cannabis, there are I'm sure there's other facilities that are giving tours for people to learn. I think it's a really amazing educational experience, and wow, how amazing that you were able to have your students do that. That's really, you're like the coolest professor ever.
Some of them think that.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. But anyway, so what brought you to American Cannabis Nurses Association? Here we are. I'm serving. This will be my 3rd year serving on the board. I've been involved with the American Cannabis Nurses Association since 2017 as a member. Was honored to serve on the board for the past 2 years. This is my 3rd year serving. I am membership chair of membership committee. which has been really, really fun, and I've been enjoying that. And just really excited to have a fresh new board. Really happy to have you, and that you're now secretary, and I'm on one of your committees. You also are chair of policy and government affairs. But what was what made you decide to become a member and to get involved? That's the next question.
Okay. Well, being the true nurse educator that I am, I have all this beautiful stuff I'm doing in my classes, and I needed to share it. So I went to the ACNA conference in Albuquerque to start sharing some of the research that I was doing on the teaching strategies. And while I was there, I happened to meet Carrie Clark-Cadu, and she had just released her book on cannabis, The Handbook for Nurses. And I was so excited. I had her autograph it for me. And while I was there, it was just so scientific. I was so impressed by, I told you, I'm a bench science person in the background. You know, I make wine. I'm a winemaker. I like chemistry, and I like how this works. It was fascinating. So while I was in Albuquerque, I signed up for the Pacific College program. And what a great program to understand that you have a thorough understanding of what's going on, to have that information where you're not just reading an article here and an article there, or watching just one podcast. It was the whole collection across the board, and really talking to nurses.
Nice.
And I think that was very important to me as a nurse, to be comfortable and confident in what I was doing. So that's how I got involved with ACNA. And then the following year, I came back, and I had been in class. So I had classmates that met me there. And I had two classmates in particular that we were the three musketeers. I was the academic person, but I had Michelle Wang, who is in the insurance company and doing case management, and also Sammy Pyle, who was very interested in doing retail and patient coaching. So the three of us were very, very excited about being part of ACNA, and we are still every week talk to each other and support each other and explore what's going on, because we have good things happen and we run into barriers too, and that's just the reality of it. And to have a support group of nurses is really important.
Yeah.
So I met them, and at the conference, I also, you still there?
Yep. Can you see me?
I can. Yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to share the website for our viewers.
Sure. Yes. Let's see if I can find a spot that will show. There we go. This is our standards of practice. So this was the first I met the people that were involved from the ACNA in establishing standards for cannabis nursing. And this included not only Carrie Clark-Cadu, but Rachel Parmalee and Deanna Summers. And so this was another, for me to have mentors and role models and aspirational people, this was a really important to me in 2023. And
Yes,
then, like you said before,
the American Nurses Association, which represents 5 million nurses, finally recognized cannabis nursing as a specialty, which is amazing. And so that book, you know, was written by Deanna had a committee, Deanna Summers, who is now the president-elect, and she'll be starting her term as president in 2026, was the primary lead author of that book. And the cannabis scope and standards of cannabis nursing is the who, what, when, where, why we're doing what we do and how we do it, et cetera. It was very, very good. I've read it like 3 times because we're actually updating our current curriculum to be in alignment with the scope and standards, you know, to help those nurses when the exam does come out at some point in time, they'll have a resource with our company to be able to learn and study. So, yeah, so it was very, very exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the third really exciting thing that happened at this conference was that I had a chance to present with you. Not only you, but with Kathleen Graham. And it was such a nice experience because I presented my poster and then you presented your poster. But Elizabeth was in the audience and she was recording this, and afterwards she came up to me and she said, "Would you like a copy of a recording that I took of you?" And I just thought that was so personal and so warm and so inviting that it felt like home to me. So meanwhile, I couldn't help but run out and go buy her book too. So when
nice.
I actually physically see Elizabeth face to face, she owes me an autograph too.
She will definitely sign my book for sure. Yeah, Cannabis for Health, Become a Coach actually became the background for the programs that she created. And then when I merged my company into hers, we started to evolve and actually add more programs, and we're starting to edit all of them because, as you know, things become outdated. Like even the scope and standards of cannabis nursing eventually is going to have to be rewritten, right? Because research is evolving, policy is changing, laws are changing. And so, that will need to be looked at some point in time as well, to be a redo, a refresh on that, so so those books have been very pivotal as well. I was honored to be able, I remember Carrie Clark, and it's funny looking back at my chapter, I co-authored a chapter with Marissa and Jody, and it was the Cannabis Nurse Experience. And it's just so interesting because we have the book, and I decided to take a walk down memory lane and just to see even now how much has changed and how I take care of patients and how I train health professionals when I'm working with them. It's evolved, right? Because we're evolving, we're innovating, we're doing things different, new information's coming out, new research is coming out. And it's a very, very exciting time for the plant medicine people of the world that really love to educate and teach on it, So let's talk about your role in the American Cannabis Nurses Association. So you have a couple of roles. Well, A, you're a member, but B, you're also the secretary. Let's talk about what the secretary's role is so people understand.
Well, lucky me, I'm the secretary at the moment of both the Policy and Government Affairs Committee and the Board of Directors. So, and I think that's a good fit for me. I had spent, in my academic role, I spent 5 years as a academic policy and compliance officer, and I oversaw the IRB. So I had a chance to really understand compliance, understanding regulations, and the importance of good documentation that you can find when you need it. And so I think it's more than just keeping the minutes of a meeting. It's having that care to have the documents that we have in good condition, not only for current but for historical purposes.
Yes. So a history. So all the policy statements, the white papers, the position statements, et cetera, having those all in a specific place, updated, research, substantiated, APA format, branded appropriately in a particular place for people to access. And you're doing an amazing job. And so I know, as secretary, and we're very grateful to have you. Now let's talk about policy and government affairs, because that's a committee. So that's a committee of American Cannabis Nurses Association. So tell me about that committee.
Okay, our committee is a recommending body. So what we do is we come up with recommendations to the board, and from there the board can take action on that. But what we look at is not only position statements, which is the way for the ACNA in a short white paper to be able to address current events and things that are going on. We also take a look at policy, make sure that it's current, it's updated, and established, and maybe promote new policy if we need new policy. But we are very important in collaborating with other organizations and finding partners, because there are a lot of people working on policy, cannabis policy right now. They're not all nurses, and there's strength in numbers. So the more that we can bring people together and collaborate, the bigger impact we can have.
There we go. Very good. And it's just an example, of putting together America's for Safe Access. Your co-chair, Kathleen Graham, did an amazing job. Big shout out to Nurse Kathleen, for hosting an amazing webinar with Americans for Safe Access. The original position statement of the American Cannabis Nurses Association has been to fully deschedule cannabis. Well, now we're re-examining that, right? We're re-examining that and looking at all the different options. And is that in the best and highest interest of nurses and patients to have it fully descheduled? I don't know, so that's what's grand about having the involvement of policy and government affairs to connect with the Americans for Safe Access. And ACNA members now have an opportunity to become members of Americans for Safe Access, which is one of the perks of being a member of the American Cannabis Nurses Association, is that overlap into other organizations that you may not know have existed in the past. Yeah.
That's right. So our mission in ACNA is to promote excellence in cannabis nursing care. I love acronyms, we use ACERP, advocacy, collaboration, education, research, and policy. And the PGAC committee hits on most of those. And I really wanted to go to PGAC because I have a true love for policy. But also, as I looked at the organization, we have a lot of nurse educators, very strong nurse educators in the organization. So I really wanted to fill a niche that I felt needed some attention. And I really am hoping that I can make a really positive impact with the work that I'm doing.
Well, I love being on your committee, so I am happy to show up. The third or one Thursday a month to gather and to help and to contribute. It's really been an honor to serve under you. So thank you for being chair of that committee, and you and Kathleen are doing a phenomenal job. Great work.
Kathleen.
And so again, let's talk a little bit too about any stories that you have to share about your cannabis nursing advocacy journey, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. You bet. Okay. So I am a reader and a writer. I'm an academic. Okay. So I'm a reader and writer. Very, very excited that I just published my 40th nursing article. And that to me is a huge milestone. But if you ask me, yeah, I'm super excited. It is because you're communicating to other nurses about nursing and things that are important to you in nursing. So to me, it just makes perfect sense. But if my best stories have to be my student stories, right? So I wanted to share with you a couple of little articles that my students have done. And this was like over the past 5 years. I had a student named Laura, and she wrote an article called The Nurse's Role in Dispensing Modern Marijuana Myths About Morning Sickness. And she was interested in maternal care. There we go. Okay. So that was really fun. And she was really interested in that aspect of it, and so she was able to put that together. I had another student, Kelly Chavez Flores, who was very interested in pediatrics. So she wrote an article, When the Gummy is More Than Yummy, Preventing Pediatric Cannabis Toxicity.
There you go. When the Gummy is More Than Yummy. That's a great title.
That's fun. When I finished with Pacific College, I published, and it's what is the a stiff joint for a stiff joint. It had to do with arthritis.
What does a stiff joint have to do with a stiff joint of arthritis? See, that's fun. So it's fun, a play on words, but also educational and catchy. I think that's great.
Yeah. I had a nice student. She was a dental student, Maricela, and she wrote about the lived experience of providing preventative caries, like cavity care.
Yes.
After COVID-19 and cannabis legalization.
Yes, dental caries are a real thing. The sugary treats, the dry mouth, really being able to take care of oral hygiene is so important. Cavities are no fun.
That was part of it, but what she also found in her study was there was a tremendous amount of broken teeth after COVID because of intubation, and that there are real concerns about anesthesia for cannabis users. And so after she wrote this, we're starting to see guidelines coming out for anesthesia and cannabis users. So that was a great article. I enjoyed working with her on that. And the last one I wanted to share today had to do with a student. Her name is Chyla Wagner, and she's studying to be a healthcare administrator. And she put a screening tool into our electronic medical record at the University Health Center. So her article was called Adopting College Health Clinic Electronic Medical Record Screenings for Cannabis. And this just came out this year.
Wow.
So,
Congratulations. That's amazing. Good work.
exciting. And those are my stories when I can live through my students and make an impact in this world and know that we have another 30 years of impact to make because they're just getting ready to graduate. Fantastic.
Yeah. Wow. Good work. Wow. Good. I'm like, that's really impressive. I'm really excited that you came on the show today. You know, it was amazing. You know, for the new viewers and people that, you know, are new to cannabis as medicine. And, you know, we like to talk about how we take care of our endocannabinoid systems, you know, how we nourish that system. You don't need to use cannabis and hemp products to nourish that symptom. That's very important system. There are other things that you can do or not do. And so for our viewers, how do you take care of this glorious system in your body?
Okay, two ways, I think. One is I've told you I have a farm and we grow grapes. So for me, one of the life's best joys is to get out into the sunshine, prune the grapes, take some time and a break from my everyday life, have some mindfulness, have some time to take a deep breath and really enjoy the experience. And studies have shown that there are increases in endocannabinoid levels in your body when you do these kind of activities. I also really like to sing and play guitar and some keyboards. And this is very impactful on your anandamide levels. They've shown 42% increases in anandamide when you're doing these kind of musical experiences. So I think sometimes that is all you need to have a positive impact on your endocannabinoid system. And if you feel good, this is not the time for you to have to start cannabis because your endocannabinoid system is working well.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very good. Yeah, that's awesome. Yes. I remember one of my presentations, one of the funnest presentations I did was on the different ways to support and nourish the endocannabinoid system. I did that at the Denver conference that we did. And that was really pivotal and really fun. Had a huge panel of nurses and everyone talked about something a little bit different. And it was very, very enriching. So that's the most important thing. The most important thing for nurses, patients, providers, we have an endocannabinoid system that can be nuanced, influenced with or without cannabis, and generally the healthy lifestyle activities that you hear all of the holistic nurses preach about are those things that are going to support and nourish that most important system. You know, we love cannabis as medicine. We love hemp CBD products, but it's more than that. It's truly about everything else that you're doing and not doing in your life that's going to help this system thrive and flourish and keep you healthy. And as I like to say, living your best life. So this has been an amazing show, Janice. You know, for new viewers, I'm going to add this back to the stage. American Cannabis Nurses Association. You can join. I'm not going to join or renew button here. You go under membership. You can see the home, about, resources, government, governance, membership, sponsors, join now. And so we invite you to come take a peek. Exciting. ACNA is hiring an executive director. There's just a ton that's going on with the American Cannabis Nurses Association. And so we would love for you all to join us. Help us in our mission to advance cannabis nursing and the therapeutic use of cannabis. So with that being said, Janice, it's been awesome to have you on. You are the first board member that I've had on this year. I plan on having everyone else on. Jeremy's coming on in June to share his story, which will be really amazing.
Fantastic.
This has been a really good show. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to end with my favorite video. And remember, everyone, what it's all about. It is truly all about living your best life and helping others do the same. We'll see you next time.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.